Hey guys, welcome back to V1Tech. Today we're going to be showing you how to take a pre-built computer, something like this that we purchased from Micro Center. This is a power spec computer that looks, pretty decent, and with some mod parts, some fans, cables, and some stuff you can purchase over at V1Tech.com, we can toss it into a new case, something like this, and make the computer look personally your own. Let's get into it. For starters, we're going to have to take the components out of this power spec computer we've got here. We are going to want to take a lot of the parts out of it, obviously, since we're going to transplant it over. For the video today, we are going to be using the Lee & Lee. This is the PC 011 Dynamic. Now, say what you will about the case. It is a very popular one. Everybody's got it. But at the end of the day, it's your computer. It's what you're using. And quite frankly, it's what we had around the office. Now, first things first, we're going to want to take all of the components out of this computer here. So the main stuff that's going to be coming out is going to be the motherboard, the RAM, the M.2. Those are all mounted on board. And then the other thing is the cooler as well. We're going to leave the cooler mounted on the processor, but we're going to have to take the radiator with the fans out from the chassis and then transplant that over the new case. Some things that we are going to be leaving behind, obviously, is going to be a lot of the cabling and the front two fans, as well as obviously the case itself. We're going to take this guy off, and let's go ahead and just take some of the cables apart here. So starting with the graphics card, that one's nice and easy. We can get this big guy out of the way. Alrighty, we've got two screws here at the rear, so we are going to have to take these out. Alrighty, once we've got these guys out, make sure the cables are all undone. There's one clip here at the very back of the chassis there. We're gonna have to make sure that that is pushed open. Sometimes it does get a little bit difficult, but with enough wiggling there, you should be able to get the graphics card out. Make sure you take care of this. Sometimes these can be pretty heavy, and set this off somewhere safe. After that, we're going to take the larger items like the 24 pin out. Now there is one clip on the side, but you can tell I'm kind of wiggling it quite a bit. There's a lot of pins here. This is the main power for the majority of your computer. And then I'm just gonna kind of go around the bottom side of it here. So next is going to be the front USB 3.0 connection there. That is for the top two USB 3s. Down here at the bottom, we've got the smaller power connectors. That's going to be the power switch here for the power button, and then the power LED to show you that the computer is turned on. We've got some fan connectors down here. These are the 4-pin connectors with the 2 notches right here on the top. We've got one of them there and one of them here, so there's 2 fan connectors there. And then over here on the left-hand side, we've got HD audio. We're gonna have to get this guy out as well. Do a double check. There's usually only mostly cables from this bottom row right here, and then up the side, we see we don't have any other cables connected. Now for this case, we do have a mesh filter we've got to take off so that we can access the screws at the very top of this. And we're just gonna go ahead and take all these screws out. All right, and then once you've got the last screw out here, we're gonna set this down. Now this one is a top-mounted radiator, so you do have to be a little careful. There should be some cables pre-attached. They did a pretty good job at cable management here in the back, so it is kind of holding itself in from the cables there, so we are going to have to be a little careful. I am going to go ahead and flip this around so we can take a look at the backside and disconnect some of these cables. This is kind of hanging here, so we'll leave that right there. After we take this rear panel off, we are going to get in here. You can see they are holding the fan cables that are kind of holding that radiator up with this zip tie here, so we are going to have to cut this, but once we cut it, it is going to drop the radiator on the backside, so we're gonna wanna make sure that doesn't drop and damage anything or damage itself. So make sure you've got it in hand. If you're in a situation like this, we're gonna cut this cable here. And then it looks like it is also tied down here with some of these cables. So we're gonna chop some of these zip ties. Now, a lot of pre-builds do use zip ties in a lot of their system integrated builds. So be careful that you're not going to cut any of the cables when you do cut the zip ties. We do have some precision cutters here, so it's not terribly difficult, but it does happen nonetheless sometimes. All right, so I've got the cooler sitting down here. These are the cables coming off of the fans. That should be the only cabling that you have coming from this radiator down here. So we should be able to disconnect these. There are 4 cables, 2 for the fan, 2 for the lighting. So these cables can now just kind of sit out of the way, and we get a really good view at the top of the motherboard up here, so we can see what cables are coming from the back side of the board. So this cable here we can take out. This one is coming from the back of the case. We can take that and run it back that direction. Same thing with a couple of these ones here. And then we need to make sure that we have all of the cables for this part here, since we do have this liquid cooler. The only other cable that we've got attached is this other one down here, but we can leave that one attached since we're not going to take the cooler off of the motherboard. And the very last one we're going to have to double check for is this processor, the CPU power cable here in the top corner. There are some clips on the very top, so you do have to push the clips down, and then we can take this guy out from the back. So from here, now that we've double checked to make sure that all of the cables are detached, we do have some screws that we do have to take out for this motherboard here. Now there are 9. There are going to be different columns starting here, here in the middle, and then there's one tucked up in the corner on the left-hand side all the way back here. You can kind of see it right there. And then there's going to be another set of those across the middle right about here, and then another set down here at the bottom. So let's go ahead and take those out. So after you have taken all of the screws out, I'm kind of holding the motherboard in with my hand. Good recommendation to do that once you get the last screw out. Now I did not pull all of the cables through. I'm just kind of leaving them where they're at. So we are going to take this and I'm going to kind of slowly try to get it out. Make sure you're pulling the cables back where you need to, and you should be able to get it out nice and easy. Once you do, make sure you set this guy on something nice and safe, like some cardboard, if you have a motherboard box, a case box, things like that. So after you've got the motherboard out, we're gonna go ahead and flip the case around. Now in this particular build, we don't have any additional storage. We don't have any of the 3.5-inch hard drives or any of the 2.5-inch hard drives, whether that be solid states or not. We've only got the one M.2 on the motherboard. So the only other thing we really need is gonna be this power supply here. So let's go ahead and pull these through. Get all of these cables back through to the front side. Doesn't have to be this super clean right now because we are going to be rebuilding most of it into the new case. This is the time to kind of clean up this case and do anything you need to before we move on to the next part, which is moving all of these parts into the new build that we're doing here. Now to remove the power supply, we do have these 4 screws here at the back. It should be the ones going directly into the power supply itself. So we're just going to go ahead and remove these. And then after we've got these 4 screws removed, we should be able to just slide the power supply out from the side. Some of them require you to take it out from the back itself, but in this one, we should be able to just kind of maneuver it out and then make sure that we've got all the cables and take this all separate from the case cables themselves. So after we've moved the case off to the side, now we're going to be building into the new case here. So what I like to do with new cases, once you get them out of the box, is go ahead and take all of the panels off. Just something that it's nice and easy to work on. You've just got an open platform for you to be able to build into, maneuver all of the cables as you need to, so on and so forth. So for the 011 here, we obviously have to take that top panel off, which allows us to take all of these other panels off in a toolless fashion. So you don't have any screws or anything. The only screws you have are for that top panel, first and foremost. So go ahead and take all of the glass panels off. And then the rear panel is the same. You just lift up and it should come right out as well. Once you've got your case all bare bones down, you can see I've got no panels from the front to the side, the back side, or even the top on this case. Now the next thing we're going to want to do before we get started on anything is go ahead and go to the back of the case here, where you've got some of the pre-installed cables for your front panel and whatnot. What we will need no matter what is going to be the case accessory box. All cases, most cases I should say, come with a case accessory box like this. Now it is usually something that is just in the hard drive bay. Usually it's something just very similar to this here. So it's got all your screws and everything in it. We got to take this guy out, get all the screws that we need from it. And then after we've taken the box out, we can go ahead and put the sled back in, just in case we put any hard drives in later. Let's go ahead and get this box opened up here. Get the baggie out for all of the screws. Dump these out. So we do have a manual in this box here. Shows you how to do the install in the case. We've got a couple of Velcro straps that come with it as well. And they usually give you a rubber block for your power supply for kind of fan vibration for the rear. We're not going to use it in this case, but it's cool that they ship it. Let's go ahead and set the screws and the Velcro straps off to the side and get back around to the front. So the next install we're going to have to do is going to be putting the motherboard into the case here. What I like to do is, good thing to do is set the case down on the back side. That way you've got easy access to the motherboard tray from the top here. This is going to be easier for you to lay the motherboard down on top of. That way you can take the motherboard out, kind of do everything you need to with the gravity going down like this. After we've grabbed the motherboard, and again we do have the cooler still attached here, we're going to go ahead and lay this guy down. Now when you put it in, you want to go at a swooping motion from the rear I/O so that it sockets into the rear plate nice and easy. Now the one thing to keep note of if you want to get an angle on the backside here is that this motherboard actually has a built-in rear I/O shield here. So it's not something that we had to pre-install, but if you do have a motherboard that doesn't have a pre-installed rear I/O shield, now would be a good time to do that before you put the motherboard in. So ours went in nice and easy. From here, we want to line up that rear I/O section where the USB ports are, and then of course line up all of the screws. So you can see most of these are lining up pretty all right, but as long as they get pretty close, that's all we're really worried about. And then next we're going to run these cables and kind of guide this where it's going to sit right up top. Make sure it's still going to fit nice and easy. And everything looks like it's going to mount in nice and easy from there. After that, we're going to go ahead and take all of the screws that we need to mount the motherboard back into the new case here. Again, those 9 screw points that we took out, the 3 at the top, middle, and bottom, we're going to go ahead and put those back in now. So now that we've got the motherboard mounted, we've got all the 9 screws put into the board here, we're going to mount our liquid cooler back up at the top. One thing we do want to make note of is that we do want to take all of these cables and push them to the back of the case as soon as possible before we mount anything. So there is this grommet right up top here. We do want to get those into there and then just push them as far through as we can before we get the mount going here and line things up from there, and we'll be able to stand the case back up and put the screws into the top. Make sure you line it up proper so that it is sitting nice and easy. You're not getting too much resistance one way or another. Make sure your holes are all lining up. After we have all the screws put in for the radiator, we're gonna make sure that we tuck this last cable here that's coming out of the water block and tuck it through the same grommet up here at the top that we used the other ones at. A little bit tough now that the radiator's in, but it should be not too bad. Now you can see we are keeping all of the cables nice and clean, and we do want to keep that note as we keep moving forward. So anything we put in that's got some cables to it or anything that we mount with cables to the case, we do want to make sure it's staying nice and clean. The rule of thumb with cable management is you want to keep all of the cables for the case at the back side of it so that you don't have to see them, and they only come back to the front when they have to. The next piece here with the 011 case that we actually have this kind of a cable plate here. So there are 2 thumb screws up here at the top that we can take out. And then one thing you do have to keep note of with this case is there is a small one down here at the very bottom. Be gentle with this one, it can strip pretty easily. And then once the screws are taken out, this plate comes out nice and easy. You can mount some SSDs to this as well, but it is mostly a cable plate to kind of keep all the cables in here. And you can see all of the stock default cables that we've got. So little rundown, we've got USB-C front I/O, USB 3.0 connection. This is for the 2 USB 3s up at the front. And then lastly, we've got the front panel connectors here for power switch, power LED, and hard drive LED, as well as HD audio. So we're going to take these cables and we're going to run them through the front side, but let's go ahead and take a look at the front and see where we should be running them through. Most cables start on the right-hand side of the motherboard. There usually aren't many above the 24 pin here, but they usually are right below it all the way down to the bottom, as well as down on this bottom row. The first one we're going to want to take a look at is the USB 3.0 here. This one is one of the larger connectors. We're going to take the larger USB 3. Again, keep all the cables as hidden as possible until they have to come out. And this USB 3 does have a notch on it, and you can line it up with the notch on the connector there. So we are going to go ahead and route this guy in. Another one that's really close is going to be the one right above it here, actually, the USB-C connector. This is going to be for the use of USB Type-C on the front panel of the case, which this has, and our motherboard has the header for. So we're going to plug it in. The Lee and Lee comes actually at a 90-degree angle, so it makes it nice and easy for cable routing, makes it look clean. Just connect that guy in, again, right next to where the connector's at. And then moving down from here, we are going to have the front I/O. Now there are a lot of pins down here. You are going to want to reference to your motherboard manual to see exactly which pins are supposed to be connected, but for our case, we're going to have to run these front I/O cables up and through here. Now we've already referred to our motherboard manual, so I know that the power LED cables go with the positive on the left, negative on the right, like that. We're going to do the power switch right next to it. And the last one we have is going to be the hard drive LED, but we are actually just going to leave this disconnected. This is a gaming computer after all, and we don't need to know when the hard drive's running. And then the last cable we're going to run is going to be the HD audio, which is down here at the very bottom left. So we're going to run this cable through the bottom grommet right here. This is the closest one to it. There is a notch missing from the connector there. So let's go ahead and line it up with the notch missing on the motherboard. Connect it all the way in, nice and snug, and pull the cable tight. So the next thing we're going to want to do is run the power supply. This is a power spec 750 watt 80 plus bronze. So this is a more off the shelf unit that we've got here. Now, when they put it into the case for us, they do ship with all of the cables pre-attached. Now, following that, we are going to go ahead and pre-attach our cable extensions. We did opt for black ones with black combs on here. So this should clean it up a lot. We did talk about in the last video that they are ketchup and mustard cables, basically referencing the fact that you can see all of the different colored wiring, and it's basically covered through a see-through housing that you can still see all the cables with. So you can definitely tell the difference there. It's going to clean it up quite a bit, especially once you put some combs on it. Makes it nice and straight. The next one we're going to need is going to be the processor cable. So this one is going to be a 4+4 for 8 combined. This will hook up. This goes to the top corner, so definitely going to need this one as well. We are running an EVGA 3080, and this thing does take a lot of power. So we're going to take all 3 of our graphics card cables extensions here and hook them up. All right, one thing to keep note is that we are running cable extensions, so they are extensions. You are going to have longer cables overall. This is going to be your stock cable from all of this here. You are adding some, so if your case doesn't have very good cable management like this one does, be wary. It might be a little difficult to manage these and make them look good like they're supposed to. So after we've got those plugged in, we're going to go ahead and mount these into the case. All right, after we've got the 4 screws mounted, one thing that I did want to make note of is that we do want to make sure that the fan is open and breathable. If I were to mount this the other way, which is possible, this fan would be pushed up against the motherboard tray back here, and it would not be getting very good airflow. So we did want to make sure we put it at the back where the rear panel does have very good airflow for it. Your case may vary. Most cases have a bottom power supply shroud that they can sit in that you can mount it up or down, but just double check and make sure you're not choking the fan on your power supply in particular. I'm going to work my way around the motherboard starting from the top left-hand corner. We're going to go all the way across and then down as we need to. So starting up in the very top left, we are going to need the processor power cable to come through. This guy here, and we're going to plug it into this top connector. A little difficult, but should fit in there nice and easy. This motherboard has 8-pin next to a 4-pin that is just kind of sits right next to it. You don't need both in most case scenarios. Most motherboards only require that you run the major 8-pin. Definitely reference your motherboard model. Every motherboard's different, but most of them only require the 1/8. So in this instance, our power supply actually only comes with 1 8-pin. So we don't need the additional 4, just for some additional overclocking if you're going to be pushing it a little harder. The next one we're going to want to run through is this larger 24-pin. This is going to be the main system power. So we're going to go ahead and push this big old connector in through the side right here. Run it through nice and easy. And we're going to want to get a big old curve on this. Push it in nice and easy. Make sure you're lining up the clips and pull it back so it looks good coming out. The last ones we're going to need are just the 3 graphics card connectors. We are going to be doing the graphics card last, so I'm just going to kind of leave these sitting in the back here for now, and we'll get to them in a little bit. At this point, after you've got the motherboard, your cooler, however you're mounting it that way in the case, once you've got the front I/O cables plugged in, once you've got all the cables connected through your power supply and your power supply mounted in the case, now's a good time to double check and make sure you don't need anything else, things like hard drives, fans, anything like that. In this instance, we are only going to be adding fans to this build, so we do have these 3 fans that we do sell at V1Tech. They are center hub lit as well as dual ring lit, so you've got the front and the backside lit up. We are going to be running the fans as an intake, and that's going to be nice because we're still going to be able to get the lighting, whereas most other fans just have the lighting on the front side, so we'd have to run it as an exhaust. So you can see it's nice and debadged, so you can put whatever you want on the side. Almost some OEM looking fans that are super easy to install. These are going to be super easy because these fans do offer a way to daisy chain them for both the ARGB and the fan. Next, we are going to go ahead and install the graphics card. Now we went ahead and took the rear I/O plates out, so we do have 2 at the bottom here for the support bracket. So we're going to go ahead and take the graphics card, make sure that the clip is already open here for the PCIe slot at the back, push that back nice and tight, and then line this in. It's pretty easy for most cases. You should just be able to kind of line it up with the slot you've got there, make sure everything looks right, and then give it a little bit of a shove there. Don't be too aggressive with it, but don't be too gentle. Put it in kind of with some confidence. After you've got the graphics card in, you want to make sure you put the screws in on the backside. So there are 2 screws we've got to hit here. I usually lift up on the card to alleviate some of the sag. So after we've got the graphics card installed, before we get to the cables there, we are going to move on to the custom mod parts we got from V1Tech.com. So we're going to go ahead and start with the support bracket here, and then we're going to move to the back plate on the back of the video card, and then to the AIO cover as well. Starting with the support bracket, before we get that installed, I went ahead and sized it up already. We do have one of the ARGB cables off on the side, but we need to make sure that we install the bump stop. In the baggie here, we do get two different sizes. We've got the long one and the short one. This one's gonna be sitting pretty close, so I think the short one's gonna do us just fine. So we can set the long one off to the side. We do have one of the rear nut plates that we're gonna have to use to install. And then we do have 4 of these long threaded screws as well. So 2 of them are going to be used to install the support bracket, and 2 of them are going to be used to mount the bump stop to the front of it. This is the part where you do have to size up what side you want the bump stop to be on, whether it's the front side or the back side. You do still have to have the nut plate on either side. So if you do the back, you still have to see the nut plate on the front. I actually prefer to see it on the front side, so I'm going to go ahead and install it right there. But the other thing to keep note of is the thickness of the video card that you have with the rear I/O plate. If you want to look down here, we do have the I/O plate that stops here on the back side, and you can see how much further the graphics card extends past it out to this point. That distance there can change whether or not you put the bump stop on the front side or the back side. We have the play to do either. We just don't want to run into the fans, so we're going to go ahead and do the front side just the way I like it. We've gone ahead and sized up the bump stop here. I have tightened down to the distance we want to install it to be able to support the graphics card we've got. So the first thing we're going to have to do is take the ARGB cable we've got here, run it back in the grommet all the way back there, just kind of get it going for now, and we'll be able to go to the back here after a little bit to go pull it all the way through. Once you've got the cable inserted through, you are going to go ahead and line up this plate here and run the screws in on the side. Now once you've got the screws most of the way in, you're going to want to go ahead and size it up to how you think it's going to support your graphics card the best, and then tighten it up once you find that sweet spot. All right, so next thing we're going to be doing is installing the ARGB backplate. So what we'll do is we'll actually take one of these circles off. You can just stick it right onto one of the magnets there, and then slide the magnet off here. And then we can take the stuck magnet, and then we just stick it onto one of the circles there. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and peel this adhesive, and then we'll stick the back plate right over down on top of it, so that way, once we let them all stick on top of it, the sticky adhesive should stick to the back plate more than the magnet should pull down. That way we can get a seamless fit every time and be able to take it back off if we ever need to do any maintenance on the back plate. For this graphics card, there's not a whole lot of screw points that are going to be nice and convenient that also line up here. We did go ahead and choose these front 2 here. We've got one right in the middle, and then over on this far side here. Once we do that, we're going to go ahead and run this cable back. There's a grommet there that you should be able to run it through. And then we're going to go ahead and line the back plate up and give the graphics card a little squeeze right where you've got the spots. Make sure the sticky parts are hitting the back plate as best they can. Try not to push down on the card. You don't want to have too much wear and tear on the PCIe slot. Just go ahead and squeeze it on there. Make sure you're giving some support on the bottom. And once you do, you should see that the back plate comes up and you've got all the stickies on there. And it's nice and easy to readhere, and it's magnetic on there. It'll have a little bit of play, but it definitely stays in place a lot better than not having it. It's already looking pretty good. You can see the back plate on here is sitting nice and easy, and then the support bracket lines up pretty well also. Next, I'm going to go ahead and put these cables in. So I've already went ahead and pre-combed them. I just have to go ahead and give them a nice curl. You do have to be careful on getting them through from the rear section. These are extensions, so the distance may vary. We also don't want to bump too much into the support bracket here. Looking really good, especially with the back plate and the support bracket going already. Go ahead and do some straightening here, and we'll move on to the next step. So next we're going to go ahead and install the AIO cover. I've got 4 of the double-sided adhesives left. So if we take a look at this cooler block here, we can see that the lighting comes directly from the middle here. So I think what I'm going to do is just do a left, right, and then top and bottom for the adhesive. That way these don't block any of the light coming through. Your mileage may vary. Double check your model as well. Make sure that you're not blocking into the light, or if you do, block as little as possible. It's up to you, but something definitely to keep note of when you're going to install these. So I'm just going to put one right here on the top, right here over on the side. Take the last 2 here, put one on the bottom, and the other side. Just making sure I'm not blocking the Cooler Master logo. It's gonna go right in the center there. Now this is definitely gonna be the easiest install. Once I've got the sticky on the back side of it, we'll go ahead and just line this guy up. Make sure it's nice and straight. And just press it on once you get it nice and even. So we went ahead and tightened up the rear section. I went ahead and put one of the rear plates on, ran the power cable and turned the switch. You can see we've got some trickle power coming through. So we're gonna go ahead and turn the system on, double check everything looks good. Wow, yeah. You can see how much the lighting definitely changes it, how much the lighting comes through on the AIO cover. On the back plate here, we've got the side shine. The graphics card lighting definitely looks really good, and the support bracket's awesome there. We do have some top-down lighting from the fans that came stock. They aren't addressable RGB, but they still look good. But definitely next to these fans here, you know, those things look amazing on the side panel. I mean, there you guys have it. You know, we took a standard power spec that we had in the other one. Luckily, you know, all the parts were ATX standard compatible to a normal case. And by adding things like, you know, a couple fans, some black cables, and especially the V1Tech mod parts down there, changes the entire computer. Doesn't look like one of those pre-built at all. This is just a completely new system for, you know, not a whole lot of change. And it's actually very simple to take your computer parts and just migrate them over. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Drop a comment. Let us know what you would do differently. Let us know if you like the design we picked out. We hopefully will be selling some systems very similar to something like this here in the future. So let us know what you liked about this one, and we'll catch you in the next one.